Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm sharing a what we eat in a week style video. A couple things I specialize in is sourdough bread and growing blackberries. So we've got gallons and gallons of frozen blackberries and we're still picking them. And sourdough bread, which we all love. And I'm combining the two today and making a blackberry sourdough loaf. Now for this blackberry sourdough loaf, I am using frozen blackberries. And after making this the first time, I have decided next time I'm going to use unfrozen or thawed out blackberries or ripe blackberries right off the vine, because these frozen blackberries slowed down the rising or the fermentation process of this sourdough bread so much. Even though I did shape it, put it in the banneton, and then put it in the refrigerator overnight, it just really stopped it in its tracks, and it didn't rise as much as it normally would. But it is still delicious. It still rose. It just wasn't as airy and fluffy as it normally is. So it was still delicious and gorgeous with those blackberries. And actually, we really enjoyed this loaf for 2 days. That's how long it lasted around here. But yeah, so definitely I'm going to be putting this on the blog, but I will be doing it again with fresh blackberries. The sourdough bread recipe is super simple. It's 2 cups of bubbly active sourdough starter, 1 cup of warm water. You mix that up in the bottom of your bowl. Add 3 cups of bread flour or all-purpose flour. If you don't have bread flour, a teaspoon of salt, and then you mix that up. Let the dough sit on your counter for about an hour or 2, and then you do your stretch and folds. And you do at least 4 sets of stretch and folds. So you let it rise, do another set of stretch and folds, let it rise, do another set of stretch and folds. And then before your final shaping and bulk fermentation in the refrigerator overnight, you put your blackberries in there and just fold them in real gently, shape your loaf, put it in the banneton, and then in the refrigerator overnight. And of course, I will link all the recipes I'm sharing today in the description box below. I love using my bench scrapers as cleaning tools. They just scrape everything right off of this corian countertop and make cleanup so much easier. The next thing I'm going to share with you is something that I have been dreaming up for a while. Literally had dreams about this. It is a sourdough zucchini parmesan. So a lot of people have made zucchini parmesan in all different forms, and honestly I have made it for years, but I decided I am going to dredge it in my sourdough starter that's been in the refrigerator. It's not active or bubbly. I'm going to dredge it in that before I dredge it in my Parmesan, and I'm just using the grated Parmesan that I have in the refrigerator. You definitely can use fresh Parmesan here. That would be delicious too, but this grated Parmesan, it does melt down on your zucchini and makes a bubbly, crunchy, delicious crust on your zucchini. And this zucchini, it's a little bit big that I'm using. Of course, most of them are that come out of my garden. And so I am just going to slice this up in rounds, dip it in this sourdough starter to kind of give it a little bit of moisture and help the Parmesan with black pepper in it to stick to the zucchini. And this turned out delicious. It still tastes like Parmesan zucchini, but you definitely get the flavor of sourdough in there, and it definitely helps the Parmesan to stick onto the zucchini better, so you get a little bit more of a crust. I have been making Parmesan zucchini for probably like 10 years now. I used to make it on the barbecue, which is also very delicious, but I really love it in the stove, and honestly, like, this is a meal for my family. And it is pretty low protein meal. It's a low calorie meal, but this one zucchini is dinner. And so it's delicious. It's filling, and I highly recommend it if you haven't tried this. And I will link this recipe below also in the description. One thing I love about having a garden and summertime is that I have all this fresh produce that we can use, and I don't have to do any meal planning. I can just see what we have that's fresh in the garden and prepare it really simply with simple ingredients. It doesn't take very much time. It's delicious, and we're eating seasonal, fresh, organic, good food, and I feel great about eating it and enjoying it with my family. And zucchini is one of those plants that grows like crazy here in the Treasure Valley of Idaho. Really, you only need one zucchini plant and it will feed your whole family plus extras to share with others. And this year, the funny thing is, I thought I was buying a bunch of cucumber plants. They were in the cucumber section at the nursery, the starts were. And I brought them home and I put them underneath this trellis to grow up on the trellis. And found out about a month later that those are not cucumber plants. Those were zucchini plants. So I have an overabundance of zucchini this year. I had so much that I really didn't know what to do with it. My husband had the idea to look at the local food banks and see if anyone would like them. And I was so happy to find one of our local non-denominational Christian churches has a food bank on Wednesdays and are more than happy to take my extra zucchinis and share it with those. After you get all your zucchinis coated in Parmesan and on your baking sheet, you're going to preheat your oven to about 400 degrees and make sure it's nice and hot when it goes in there. And then they just stay in the oven until they're golden and bubbly on top, so that takes about 20 minutes. You don't want these to cook too long or your zucchinis will get mushy. But if you cook it just until they're golden and bubbly on top, then the zucchini is cooked but not mushy or watery and perfectly crusted in the zucchini and sourdough flavored crust. This is just one of those meals that is a solution to a busy day where you've been busy with the kids, enjoying summer activities like swimming or working in the garden, and it only takes a few minutes to put together, about 20 minutes to bake, and it is a delicious dinner that you can serve with a protein or a salad, or like us, just have it on its own. Zucchini is one of those things that kids usually hate, but they really do like it when it's crusted in Parmesan like this. So if your kids are struggling, if you're struggling to get your kids to eat zucchini, definitely give this one a try. All right, back to this Blackberry sourdough loaf. I am just going to get this into the oven. I start with my parchment paper, and then I'm going to pull it out of the refrigerator where it's been overnight in the Banneton basket, turn it out onto this parchment paper and score it. I always end up doing the same scoring design on all my bread. But you can see that it didn't rise as much, and I'm almost 100% sure that's because my blackberries were frozen when I put them in, and it just really retarded the fermentation process. But don't worry, it still rose very nicely after I baked it, and I'll show you that, but just not as much as it normally would. I'm just going to pull my Dutch oven out of the preheated oven, and you can see that it's steaming hot. And then I will go ahead and put the sourdough loaf down into that hot Dutch oven, put the lid back on it, bake it at 425 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes with the lid on. And then I'll remove the lid and bake it for another 20 to 25 minutes with the lid off. While that sourdough blackberry loaf is in the oven, I am going to move on to one of my favorite salads I'm sharing with you today. It's a broccoli salad. I am also using cauliflower in here, but you just chop up your broccoli nice and small. You want bite-sized pieces for broccoli and cauliflower. And then I am adding to that a couple spears of celery, and I make sure, and honestly I think the secret is with this salad is to chop everything really small so that when you take a bite or put your fork in there, you get a little bit of everything and all the flavors can complement each other. So I'm chopping really small celery, broccoli, cauliflower. I'm using this pretty purple cauliflower. And then cucumber, I am taking the skin off the cucumber, and then I'll slice that up really small and put it in. Traditionally, this recipe doesn't have cucumber in it, but I have so much cucumber and it's delicious, and so I'm going to include it in my salad today. Then it is red onion, which if you have little kids, make sure you want to slice that or dice that super small. It's more like mincing your red onion. And after you get all of your ingredients into your bowl, you are going to add bacon bits and craisins and sunflower seeds. The flavors of the broccoli, the cauliflower, the onion, along with bacon bits, craisins, and the crunch of sunflower seeds makes this salad so delicious. If you have a baby shower or a bridal shower or anything like that where you're having a special brunch or meal, this is definitely a salad that I love to serve when I'm hosting. And as you can see, I am not being precise with my measurements here. You really don't need to be. I will post the recipe below at my blog, farmhouseharvest.net, so that you can print that off if you want exact measurements. But it is a very forgiving salad. Just don't add too much onion. A little goes a long way with the red onion, especially if little kids are going to be eating this. But if you mince it really small, it just complements all the other flavors so well. And just, one of the tips to making a really good salad is to make sure that you're chopping up your ingredients nice and small so that when you take a bite, you're getting a little bits of everything all in one bite so that you can really enjoy the flavor combinations. You definitely do not need to include purple cauliflower in this recipe. You really don't need to include cauliflower at all. If you just have broccoli, it tastes great with just broccoli too. But purple cauliflower is in season right now. It's beautiful, it's fresh, and I have it, so I am using it in the salad today. Once you get all of your ingredients and fresh vegetables chopped up and in your bowl, the dressing for the salad is super easy. It's made with pantry staples that you probably already have on hand. So it is mayo, and you can use homemade fresh mayo or store-bought mayo. They both work well. A little bit of apple cider vinegar, a little bit of sugar, so it's a little sweet dressing, and then salt and pepper, and that's it. And then you'll whisk that together till it's nice and creamy. Spread it over your salad, give it a really good toss, and then put it in a pretty serving dish. You can definitely use different nuts besides sunflowers in this recipe, sunflower seeds, but these seeds are like the perfect size, nice and small, and so just like with the red onion and any other ingredient that you want to chop small, they get into every little bite and just give the salad a really nice crunch. This is my secret weapon, these bacon bits. They're the Hormel low-fat bacon bits, and they're just super easy to have on hand, and I like to just keep them on hand for quick recipes like this. Definitely fresh bacon crisped up on the stove will work great in this recipe too. I'm just putting together the dressing, as you can see. Salt and pepper to taste, about a tablespoon of sugar, about a third a cup of mayo, and about 3 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. And then you just give that a nice whisk, taste it, and you can always adjust it according to your taste. So if you want it a little sweeter or a little bit saltier, go ahead and season it at this time. And then drizzle it over your salad, give it a great toss, and everyone that I know really enjoys this salad. Again, I will link this recipe below in the description. It is the broccoli salad on the blog farmhouseharvest.net if you'd like to print the recipe off. All right, while we were making this beautiful broccoli salad, our Blackberry sourdough loaf has been in the oven for about 45 minutes now, and so I'm going to pull that out and give you a little look at this. Definitely, you can brown it a lot more if you like your crust on your sourdough bread to be more brown. I really enjoy mine just golden, and you can see it definitely puffed up nicely, but I think I could have gotten this to rise at least a third, if not twice as much as it did, if I would have used blackberries that were just fresh instead of frozen. This next recipe is a baked oven glazed salmon. I am going to be using about a tablespoon of minced garlic. You want to mince that as small as you can. You're going to get as much as you can of that onto your salmon when you spread this mixture over each of those. I'm using a tablespoon of coconut aminos. You can also use soy sauce. Coconut aminos is just a lower sodium, a little healthier version. I'm using about a tablespoon. You could definitely use more honey if you want it to be sweeter, of honey. If you don't like the flavor of honey, you can definitely use maple syrup here. That would also be very delicious. I do like how honey is thicker for this because I am not simmering down this glaze, which if you're going to use more honey or if you're going to use maple syrup, you'd want to simmer it a little bit before you glaze your salmon. Another one of my favorite ingredients here is the sesame seed oil. This really gives a delicious flavor to anything that you want to have an oriental flavor. And then ginger powder. You could also use fresh ginger. I'm using about 1/4 of a teaspoon of ginger powder here. And then I am going to slice a lime and add the juice of half of a lime. You could also add some lime zest if you wanted to make it a little bit more fancy. And then I'm going to give this a nice stir. And I will also add salt and pepper, of course, to this. And you can also make this to taste. So you can adjust the salt if you want a little bit more salt, but I am just adding a couple pinches of salt, so no more than 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and fresh ground black pepper. But this flavor combination of ginger and lime, the coconut aminos, the sesame seed oil, and then salt and pepper is a very beautiful flavor combination with the garlic and then on your salmon. So it is a little bit sweet and savory and just really complements the fish. So I am just going to use a pastry brush here and apply that to the tops of my salmon before I bake it. You could also save half of the glaze if you'd like and then glaze it halfway through or after it's done baking, but you'd want to do that with separate bowls so that you're not putting the pastry brush on raw salmon and then on cooked salmon. Now, I really do love grilling salmon or smoking salmon during the summertime, but there is something just so convenient about using your oven too, and it just comes out delicious every time. This is a wild salmon, and I got these filets at Costco, which usually has the best price for salmon. And then I am going to cook this in a 400-degree oven. You want to make sure your oven is preheated for about 20 minutes or until it reaches at least 145 degrees internal temperature. And while my salmon is cooking in the oven, I am going to share with you something I have been experimenting with and really love, and that is kefir cheese. If you make kefir milk and enjoy that, you will love kefir cheese. So what you do to make kefir cheese is, this is just a very small batch that I made in this video. I did the next day make a much larger batch. So this was a pint of kefir milk. You put it in a tea towel, you hang it somewhere, let all the whey drip out, and you get this. And it is a very soft, kind of like cream cheese consistency with a kefir flavor. And as long as it's fresh kefir milk that you've made it with, it's a very mild flavor. And I'm just seasoning this soft cheese with a little pinch or two of onion powder, salt, pepper, a pinch of garlic, don't go crazy with the garlic, it's strong, and chives. So I've got some freeze-dried chives that I'll be adding to it. So really light flavors, go light on the seasoning. This cheese has a very delicate, beautiful flavor, and it is absolutely delicious. So today we ate this as an appetizer while we were waiting for our salmon to come out of the oven. But this is so good if you're going to do a charcuterie board or or you're just going to do a cheese and cracker plate for your family, one of the best appetizers or snacks you can make is kefir cheese. So it is full of live, active probiotics, super good for your digestion and your belly, and it tastes delicious too. I'm just using a rubber spatula to give all of those spices a nice stir into this cheese. The more that you mix it with a rubber spatula, or you could, if you were doing a large batch, you could use a whisk to beat everything in. It just gives the texture of this cheese a nice creamy texture, and it's delicious. So I will leave this recipe on the blog at farmersharvest.net, linked below in the description also. And the salmon's coming out of the oven, and it's got to be about 7:30 at night, so we are all starving at this point. But the salmon turned out delicious. I'm just going to serve it with sliced cucumbers and the kefir cheese, and I hope you guys enjoy all of these recipes. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the description box below. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and we'll see you next time.